I'm Peggy Alier, and I live in West Columbia, South Carolina. I used to live in Greenville for almost 40 years, but I've been down here in West Columbia because of my husband's job change. And so we're right near the state capitol here. But before that, I had worked, going all the way back, I did teach in classroom for several years, and I used some BJU Press materials because all of them weren't written at the time. That was back in the early 80s. And so, but the subjects that they had written, I was able to use, and some were even in unbound form and like loose leaf. And so that was a great opportunity to be able to be there at the beginning and be able to use those products. And I've got probably almost a 40-year relationship with BJU Press in that way. After when my kids started to get to be school age, I did homeschool for 4 years back in the mid 90s. And that was before any of the video courses were available. So everything was just parent led. And we didn't have all the resources and things like the math manipulative packets and things like that. But my kids enjoyed it. And the reason we stopped homeschooling was because I had kids getting into junior high, into seventh grade. And it's like, okay, what am I going to do next? And it actually the video courses started 2 years after I stopped. And, but the Lord knew what path I was on. And I mean, I wouldn't be here today probably if I had kept homeschooling at that time. But anyway, I mean, we just felt like we just always followed what the Lord's leading is. And then several years after I went back, the kids started school, the Lord led me over to work at the press. And so I worked there for 18 years as a writer. When I went, I learned to read from Dick and Jane books, so I did not really learn phonics. And so I said, I don't want to work on reading. I don't want to work on math. I don't know why. I like math, but those were the two. I wanted to work on science, and science was not a current project at the time. So the Lord let me work with the Bible, and that was great. I thought, oh, I get to read my Bible while I'm working every day, and that was just fun. I learned a lot from that group, that team. The press is divided into teams based on the different content areas, and that team, the leader of that team, just taught me so much about just education and just the quality and the BJU Press expects from, and the academic rigor and all of that tied together to have things interesting for the kids. And so at that time, they had what was called the Help Conference at BJU, and in the summers. And so I was able to start doing workshops then. I did the Bible workshop. And then also another blessing was the summer I started in September. That next summer, they had what was called the USA tour, where they, some writers and some of the distance learning teachers would go and do workshops and have what would be currently like a hotel meeting, like a curriculum display that we would have now. It was kind of like those types of meetings. And I traveled the whole West Coast from Washington all the way around to Arizona. And that was, I got to do that with another elementary writer as well as a secondary writer, and then some people from the business area. And I did all the workshops except for the reading and the math. And so I got to immerse myself in those other subjects. So I got a really broad picture of what was in and how they were all done. And some of those original writers were still working at the press at that time. And so I learned a lot from all of them, just about what was involved in getting a good quality textbook out, and then also how to start sharing that with other people. And so that just was good in that way. And since then, I've had opportunities to be able to, while I was at the press, to go to Christian schools and work with teachers in that way. I did different homeschool workshops at different times. and plus talking to school administrators and whenever they would come. I did gradually get to I worked on English, and then I worked on the science, and that was fun. I mean, science is my area. My older brother's a chemist. My younger brother um, had did CAD work, and so I just always have liked science, and so that was another fun one for me to be able to work on and to be able to help develop those materials. Um, and so anyway, and then three. Several years ago, my husband got a job. It's about 100 miles from where we were in Greenville. And so for about 5 years, he commuted back and forth. And finally, we're like, okay, we need to sell the house and I'll move. So then I'm down here. And then that's when the opportunity opened up for me to be a consultant and then to help and go around to a lot of the homeschool conventions and help share and encourage homeschoolers. So that's pretty much where I am today. I have 3 kids. They're all adults. They're in their 30s. I have 10 grandkids. I just had my 10th grandbaby on Saturday. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, so that's where I am today.
So what's fun is that whether it's homeschool or whatever, education and the excitement of teaching children to love God, to work with their hands, to make things fun. I think that is a lot of what your message is. Taking the materials and adapting it for your child and making the lessons come alive. And I know that you do some workshops, specifically one on which is now on YouTube. I put it up this morning, and it might be side by side with this one. But it's just a snippet, really, of one that you do at
Yeah.
conventions, which is fun and educational too. And I think that people will really enjoy watching that, because you can see there's very simple things that you can do to have the curriculum available to you as a basis, but yet you can go much farther and meet the needs of your child. And really, for you as the parent, it's fun to come up with these ideas and to see your children learn. So, you want to share maybe a couple ideas? If there's some that you didn't mention yesterday, or just maybe some maybe general ideas to help people.
Well, the main thing is if you're especially if you're using the video courses that um, the teachers are going to be doing things. Go ahead and have your child do some of those at home. You don't have to do it for every day. You might want to pick, you have your video lesson guide, so you have a general idea of what materials are needed each day and things like that. But just you might want to pick certain days. One day might be the day that you're going to do this whatever little science thing, or whatever was in math. You probably should use the manipulatives until your children grasp the concept. And those are things I remember. I didn't have the manipulatives when I homeschooled, but I had the little foam primary colored sheep that we used for counting and things like that. And my son was working on a lesson in like 5th grade, and he said, "Mom, can I use the sheep?" And he got him out of the cupboard, looked at him. He did something for like 2 minutes and put him back. Said, "Okay, I've got it." And then he went on. So he knew himself that he needed to do something, work it out visually in 3D rather than just on paper. And so those things, our kids are still um, concrete learners up through really into the upper elementary. I know myself, I'm still a concrete learner. I like to see things physically and touch them rather than just listening. And I've talked to people about if like for me, I moved recently, and so I used the Google Maps and those things to be able to get around. And then, but gradually, I learned how to get here. I didn't just have that rote memory, and there was only one way to do it to get here. I learned and experimented and got around. And so it's the same way with your kids. They might learn one way to do it, but over time, you want them to be able to think and be able to use that what they've learned in other areas. So like if there's a road blocked and things like that. I'm in the capital city of Columbia, and there's a lot of roads down here. But I've got a good handle on my area of this city right now. And but yeah, but those are tools and things that you want your kids to be thinking and thinkers and not just memorizers, because their memory is okay to start with, but you want them to be able to add to that knowledge and to keep learning. And those hands-on concrete things, they're not babyish. They're not silly, or things like that. You really want your kids to be able to touch things, hold things. And also it's like watching a video on how to cook a recipe. It's the same idea. Um, Things that I talked about yesterday, I'm trying to think what I had. I've got a lot of stuff still here on the table from that. But a lot of things, even if you're using video courses, you have access to the teacher's editions. And there's a lot of things. That's one benefit of having been a writer. I know what's in those teacher's editions. I know what's on the website, because a lot of that I wrote and put there, or I had them put there. But yeah, there's those teacher's editions are like somebody said recently, a smorgasbord. There's a lot of stuff there. You don't have to use it all. You're not going to go to a buffet and eat everything that's there. You're going to pick and choose things and what you want, what works for you. And so a lot of those extra things are in the teacher's edition that might not show up on the video courses. And I know those video courses are great. I mean, they have a lot of resources for you. But there's things on, like, available on the Teacher's Toolkit CD, or even on our resources page on the website. I think a lot of homeschoolers are starting to really recognize that. When I first started about 3 years ago, hardly anybody knew that that website was there. A lot of classroom teachers don't know that those resources are there. But there's a lot of web links there that can take you to either watch a video or to give you another activity or something like that, or ideas, or just even helps for you as a parent being able to grade something, or how do I understand a concept or something like that.
That's a great
So
point. For parents who, this kind of plays into your workshop on adapting. You might have a child who's advanced, who's gifted, and they're watching the same videos as a child who's struggling.
yeah,
But you can tweak the curriculum, and those web links, those activities, the manipulatives, the hands-on, those are all things that are at your disposal to take that lesson and make adaptations for your child. So if you want to go farther, you can go farther. If you need to slow down and work it out another way, you can do that. And so for a lot of parents, they'll ask, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help my child. Those resources are already there. So for a consultant to be able to point those things out, that is very helpful. That's one of the benefits of having a consultant, is that you're not just getting some books or some videos and then you've got to learn it on your own. You have someone who's used these materials themselves and have used them for their kids, either to slow down or speed up or follow along. And the other thing too is, if you have more than one child, just like you do with anything else. I was a firstborn. Peggy, you were not a firstborn, were you?
no, I'm middle.
The firstborn's the guinea pig kid, right? So you try things with your child, and you go, that didn't work as well, or I want to try something different the second time. And every child is different. So what works with one child may not work with another. So let's say that you've taught math 6 once for the first child, and you didn't add some of those things in for the second one. Try a couple things differently and see if it makes a difference. And when the third one comes through, you might want to try something else. And that's the beauty of it. You've got the crux of what you need, but you have opportunity to tweak it. And as we go
Yeah.
through seasons of our lives and parenthood, it's fun to be able to tweak things and make things more interesting for our kids.
Yeah, another resource a lot of people don't realize is there in the science in this last edition that went through. On the CD, we have what are called 2-day lessons. Sometimes there was content in the textbook that was maybe 6 pages long, and there wasn't a clear break to make it into 2 lessons. And it would depend on whether you want to do some of those extra TE activities with it. Or like, for example, I think it's like an insect lesson or something. I mean, you might want to be showing examples of insects and looking things up, or, some of that. So we gave you some ideas on the CD of things that you could do to add to that. So some of those, there's a lot of, like graphic organizers, maybe ways to do, a mini biography on one of the scientists. Things like that. Those ideas are in there to be able to do along with it. So those are things that would be especially good for an exceptional learner that would be advanced. And so to where you could pull some of those things, or they could be tools to help a struggling learner. You might want to pull it in and use it for them. Graphic organizers are great, and to help kids understand and to get the main ideas of things. And so, yeah, that was one thing in the last probably 5 or 6 years at the press, was being able to incorporate more of those study skills into the materials. And that's one thing I love about our material. The kids are learning those study skills in addition to just content. And so they're learning gradually. That was one thing about Bible. Every year they learned how to use the table of contents in your Bible. Most people frown on that, but kids don't have the books of the Bible. They might have them memorized in order, but they still can't find them. And so that table of contents, you use it in other books. You can use it in a Bible. And so they learn how to use that, how to use a concordance, how to use a Bible dictionary. By 6th grade, they know how they're introduced to a commentary. So then they do a word study. So how do they, if they have a question, what key words are in that question, that then how can you go through and find those from those different resources to be able to study your Bible on your own? So those are side things that they're learning rather than just the core lessons. And so there's a lot of study skill resources that are incorporated into those, into all the different subjects.
Which is a bonus, because let's say that you see something in science, some of those study skills are in Bible. That doesn't mean you only use them in that subject. That crosses over to other subjects. So maybe you don't have a graphic organizer for something in history right now, and you think, he would really benefit from having a graphic organizer. Well, go ahead and create one, or go online. There's tons of them that are available for free, but because you've seen them already in the materials you use, you already know what a Venn diagram looks like, or a different type of chart. There's no reason why you can't put one together super quick, or even have your child create one. So those things cross over. Those study skills that work in one subject work in other subjects too. So I think that's a grand point, that those are there and available to a parent. And I also appreciate the fact that you're talking about people who are using video lessons too, because a lot of times I think parents are criticized for homeschooling using the video lessons. It's just plug and play, and there's no real teaching going on, and that's not so. There is oversight. There is making adaptations, as we've talked about adding things to it. It's like, okay, we know this big thing is coming up. Let's take a couple extra days. Let's do that field trip. Let's go get some extra books and do a report on that. Let's go ahead and do the experiment that wasn't in the book or the teacher did not mention. That's part of video lessons too. And that's the nice thing, is that you've got all those options.
Yeah.
So Peggy, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing those things with us. We'll put some resource links up, as well as the link to your YouTube video tomorrow. And then if you want to join us in the comments, you can maybe answer some questions if there are some there. And then let us know which conventions, Lord willing, people might see you for the remainder of the year, and then maybe they can catch up with you and ask you some questions as well.
Okay. Yeah, and you can always find me on my Homeworks Facebook page and ask questions and interact with me that way, and find me even on the Homeworks website.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much, Peggy, and thanks for the comments, everyone. It's good to see you. Even on the West Coast, it's a little early there, so good to see you as well. And everyone have a great day.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.